Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now because today's story is one you do not want to miss, and if you're one of my regulars, you already know I would not be making a video unless something genuinely big just happened. And trust me, this one is big. This one has hairstylists losing their minds, fashion magazines writing essays, and an entire global fanbase screaming into their phones at the exact same moment. I'm talking about Jimin. I'm talking about hair. And I'm talking about a phrase that is currently taking over timelines everywhere, JIMERGENCY. Yes, you heard that right. JIMERGENCY. It's a mashup of Jimin and emergency, and honestly, once you see what sparked it, you'll understand exactly why that word exists. So grab your drink, get comfortable, because we are about to break down everything that happened, why it happened, who's talking about it, and why this single hairstyle has somehow become one of the biggest style conversations of the year. Let's start from the beginning, because context is everything here. Jimin, for anyone who somehow doesn't know, is a member of BTS, one of the most influential groups in the history of modern pop music. But what a lot of people outside the fandom might not fully appreciate is just how much of a fashion force Jimin has become on his own. Over the past few years, he's transitioned from being known primarily as a performer and vocalist to being recognized as one of the most watched style icons in the entire industry. Designers want him. Magazines want him. And apparently, hair experts now want to name entire hairstyles after the vibe he creates. This latest wave of attention traces back to a recent public appearance where Jimin showed up with a hairstyle that immediately caught the attention of everyone in the room, and then, within hours, everyone online. It wasn't just another cute hairstyle. It wasn't just he looks good again, which, let's be honest, is basically a guarantee at this point. This was something different. This was a look with actual structure, actual narrative, actual craftsmanship behind it, the kind of hairstyle that makes stylists stop scrolling and start typing. And that's exactly what happened. A globally recognized hair expert by the name of Kirk Riley looked at this hairstyle and didn't just compliment it in passing. He gave it an actual name. He called it soft punk. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, okay, that's just a cool phrase, let me explain why that name matters so much in the context of fashion and style commentary, because there's real thought behind it. Soft punk, according to the way it's being described, refers to a very specific aesthetic tension, the idea of two seemingly opposite energies existing in the same look at the same time. On one side, you have softness. Think flowing texture, gentle movement, and almost romantic looseness to the hair. On the other side, you have punk. Think boldness, edge, a kind of rebellious confidence that refuses to sit quietly in the background. When a stylist manages to blend both of those energies into a single look without one canceling out the other, that's considered a genuinely difficult styling achievement. It's easy to do soft. It's easy to do edgy. It is not easy to do both at once and have it read as intentional rather than confused. That's the modern sensibility people keep referencing when they talk about this look. It's not vintage for the sake of vintage, and it's not aggressive for the sake of aggression. It's calculated fluidity. It's the kind of hairstyle that looks like it took zero effort while actually being the product of very precise, very deliberate styling choices. And that contradiction, effortless on the surface, intentional underneath, is exactly what fashion insiders live for. Now let's talk about where this all really exploded into the spotlight, because the setting matters just as much as the look itself. This hairstyle wasn't debuted at a random appearance. It showed up at a major fashion event tied to Dior, the luxury fashion house Jimin has been associated with as a global ambassador. For anyone who's followed his journey, you already know this partnership has been a huge deal. Jimin made history as the first Asian male global ambassador for the brand, and every single appearance he makes under that title tends to generate massive attention because of what it represents, not just for him individually, but for representation in the luxury fashion space as a whole. At this particular event, part of Dior's menswear presentation, Jimin appeared with this soft punk hairstyle, and it immediately became a talking point tied directly to the collection itself. The reasoning being circulated by fashion commentary is that the collection drew inspiration from historical menswear silhouettes, specifically referencing 18th century aristocratic fashion, but reimagined with a distinctly contemporary edge. And here's the clever part. Jimin's hairstyle wasn't just complementary to that theme, it was described as a natural bridge between those two worlds. The soft, flowing length gave a nod to that historical elegance, while the styling technique, the layering, the slightly undone movement, gave it a modern, lived-in quality that kept the whole look from feeling like it belonged in a costume drama. That last point is actually one of the most repeated observations from stylists commenting on this moment. There's a very fine line in historical-inspired fashion between looking elevated and looking like you're wearing a costume. It's genuinely one of the hardest things to pull off, because as soon as an outfit starts to feel like cosplay instead of couture, the entire premise falls apart. According to hairstyling analysis making the rounds, Jimin's hair was actually one of the key elements preventing that from happening. The soft layers and natural movement in his long hair worked as a stabilizing force, reinterpreting that historic look through a contemporary lens and making sure the overall outfit read as fashion rather than theater. Let's pause here for a second, because I want you to really sit with how significant that is. We're not just talking about he looked nice. We're talking about a hairstylist publicly crediting the hair itself as a functional design element that elevated an entire luxury collection's storytelling. That is an enormous compliment in the fashion world. Hair is often treated as an afterthought in these conversations, a finishing touch rather than a core component. The fact that experts are speaking about Jimin's hairstyle as integral to the success of the collection's concept tells you just how much precision and intention went into that single detail. Now, let's get into the JIMERGENCY part of this story, because that's where things went from impressive industry commentary to full-blown internet phenomenon. The term reportedly originated from coverage tied to MTV, who used it while sharing footage from the Dior appearance. If you break the word down, it's obviously a play on Jimin's name fused with emergency, implying a kind of chaos-inducing, can't-look-away reaction. And once that phrase hit the internet, it spread fast. It became shorthand for exactly the kind of reaction fans and casual observers alike were having. People weren't calmly appreciating the look from a distance, they were reacting like something urgent was happening, screenshotting, reposting, and flooding comment sections with all-caps enthusiasm. There's something almost funny about a word like emergency being used in a genuinely celebratory way, but that's the internet for you. It's become this shorthand across pop culture spaces where something is so visually overwhelming, so impossible to ignore, that people jokingly frame their reaction as a crisis. JIMERGENCY fits that mold perfectly, and it's stuck because it captures both the humor and the sincerity of the reaction at the same time. It's playful, it's a little dramatic, and it's incredibly easy to remember, which honestly is half the battle when it comes to any phrase trying to go viral. Beyond the initial event coverage, this moment also connects to a broader pattern that's been building for a while now, which is Jimin's ongoing recognition within major international fashion publications. GQ, one of the most respected names in menswear and style journalism globally, has reportedly spotlighted the hairstyle Jimin wore during this Dior presentation as part of a larger conversation about where men's hairstyling trends are heading. According to that coverage, Jimin's look is being positioned as representative of a broader shift in long hairstyles for men, one that favors natural texture and movement over rigid, overly styled precision. That's actually a meaningful trend to unpack for a second, because menswear has been going through a noticeable transformation over the last several years. The old idea that professional or fashionable hair for men had to be short, tight, and controlled has been steadily eroding. Longer hairstyles, natural texture, and a general sense of ease and fluidity have been gaining ground, not just in mainstream fashion but in high-luxury spaces too. When a publication like GQ points to a specific public figure as an example of that shift, it's not a small thing. It's essentially saying, this person right here is helping define what that trend actually looks like in real life, not just in theory. And it's not just this one event. If you've been paying attention to Jimin's recent world tour appearances, you'll know that his hairstyling choices throughout those shows have already been generating consistent buzz. Fans and style commentators have been tracking the different looks he's debuted show after show, and according to reports, his hairstyle during this world tour has become one of the most talked about elements of each individual performance, discussed right alongside the outfits themselves. That's a pretty rare thing. Usually when people talk about a performer's tour looks, hair gets mentioned as a small supporting detail. In Jimin's case, it's being treated as its own headline. So when you put all of these pieces together, the Dior appearance isn't really an isolated incident. It's the most recent, most visible peak of a trend that's been quietly building for a while. Jimin has slowly but surely built a reputation as someone whose hairstyling choices carry real weight in the fashion conversation, not just as a nice-to-look-at detail, but as something industry professionals are actively analyzing and referencing. That's the kind of influence that doesn't happen by accident, and it's the kind of influence that tends to snowball once the right people start paying attention publicly. Let's also talk about the online reaction for a moment, because the internet's response to all of this has honestly been half the story. Within a very short window of this news and footage circulating, fan accounts, style pages, and general entertainment commentary accounts were flooded with reposts, compilations, and breakdown threads dissecting every single angle of the hairstyle. People were zooming in on the layering. People were debating whether it was closer to the soft side or the punk side. People were comparing it to previous looks he's debuted throughout the tour, trying to figure out where this particular style ranks among his most memorable moments. And of course, you had the classic wave of captions that always show up whenever Jimin does something like this. Comments calling him a trendsetter. Comments joking that hairstylists everywhere are about to get flooded with reference photos. Comments simply saying some version of "he did it again," because at this point, there's an established pattern of Jimin stepping out with a new look and immediately setting off a wave of imitation and appreciation across social platforms. It's become almost expected at this point, but that expectation doesn't seem to be dulling the reaction at all. If anything, each new appearance seems to generate even more enthusiasm than the last, which says a lot about how consistently he's been delivering on this front. There's also an interesting layer to this story worth mentioning, which is the radio and broader media coverage tied to the event itself. Reports note that American radio outlets covering entertainment news picked up on the appearance too, highlighting the significance of Jimin's role as Dior's first Asian male global ambassador and noting that this was his first official appearance tied to the brand following the conclusion of his world tour leg. That timing detail actually adds an extra layer of significance to the whole moment. This wasn't just any appearance, it was framed as a kind of reintroduction, a moment where the fashion world got its first real look at him in this specific ambassador context after a period of being consumed by tour performances. And he showed up with a hairstyle significant enough to earn its own name and its own viral nickname. That's not exactly a quiet way to make a comeback. Now, stepping back a bit, I think what makes this story genuinely interesting, beyond just being another celebrity looked good moment, is what it represents about the current state of the relationship between K-pop, global fashion, and internet culture. A decade ago, it would have been almost unthinkable for a K-pop idol's individual hairstyle choice to be treated with this level of seriousness by internationally respected hair experts and fashion publications. Hairstyling commentary at this level was typically reserved for runway models, established fashionette girls and it boys, or actors attached to major award season campaigns. The fact that a member of a K-pop group is receiving this kind of granular, expert-level style analysis tells you just how far the cultural influence of K-pop, and Jimin specifically, has expanded. It also says something about how fashion journalism itself has evolved. In the current media landscape, viral moments and expert commentary don't stay separate anymore, they blend together almost instantly. A hairstylist can coin a term like soft punk, a media outlet can turn that into a viral phrase like JIMERGENCY, and within hours the story is being picked up, translated, and discussed across dozens of languages and platforms simultaneously. That speed, that cross-platform amplification, is honestly part of why moments like this hit as hard as they do. It's not just one article, it's an entire ecosystem of commentary, translation, reaction videos, edits, and fan analysis all converging on the same 15-second clip or single photo. And speaking of that photo and video content, if you haven't already seen the actual footage from this appearance, I'll be showing clips throughout this video so you can judge the soft punk label for yourself. Because honestly, descriptions can only take you so far, you kind of have to see the way the hair moves, the way the layering catches the light, the way it shifts between looking almost windswept and effortless one moment and deliberately structured the next. That contrast is really the heart of why this look worked as well as it did. Let's also talk a little bit about Jimin's broader style evolution, because this moment doesn't exist in a vacuum. Over the years, he's gone through a lot of different aesthetic phases, from more traditional idol styling in his earlier years, to increasingly bold, editorial-leaning choices as his solo career and individual brand identity developed. What's been consistent throughout that evolution, though, is a willingness to take risks. Not every look works perfectly for every single person watching, that's just the nature of experimental fashion, but the consistency of effort and intention behind each choice has built up a kind of trust with both fans and industry professionals. People pay attention when Jimin tries something new because there's an established track record of those choices often becoming genuinely influential rather than just being a passing trend. This hairstyle moment fits neatly into that pattern. It's not a one-off surprise, it's the natural continuation of a trajectory that's been building for a while. And that's part of why industry professionals like Kirk Riley and Terrarose Bonserilli were willing to speak about it in such detailed, analytical terms. When someone has a track record of intentional, well-executed style choices, experts are more inclined to engage seriously with what they're doing rather than dismissing it as a passing gimmick. Let's circle back to Terrarose Bonserilli's analysis for a moment, because I think it deserves its own spotlight. While Kirk Riley's contribution was really about naming and framing the aesthetic itself, Bonserilli's commentary focused more on the technical craftsmanship behind the look. The idea being emphasized is that the soft layering throughout the length of the hair, combined with the natural, almost unforced movement, works specifically to reinterpret a historical silhouette through a contemporary lens. In plainer terms, this wasn't hair that was styled to sit still and look perfect in a stiff, posed way. It was styled to move, to breathe, to feel alive on camera and in person, and that quality of motion is what kept the entire look from tipping over into costume territory. This is honestly a masterclass point for anyone interested in styling theory, whether you're into hair, fashion, or just general aesthetics. Movement is one of the hardest qualities to design for intentionally. It's easy to style something that looks good in a still photo. It's much harder to style something that looks good in motion, under stage lighting, during a live event, with cameras catching it from a dozen different angles. The fact that this hairstyle reportedly held up, and even improved, in that kind of dynamic environment says a lot about the level of skill and preparation that went into it. Now let's talk a bit more about the JIMERGENCY phrase and why phrases like this tend to have such staying power in fan culture and broader internet culture. Nicknames, catchphrases, and viral labels serve a very specific function online. They compress a complicated reaction, admiration, shock, humor, excitement, all at once, into a single shareable word. That compression is incredibly valuable in fast-moving social media environments where people are scrolling quickly and reacting even faster. A phrase like JIMERGENCY does a lot of heavy lifting in a very small package. It tells you the reaction was big. It tells you it was sudden. It tells you it's specifically tied to Jimin. And it does all of that while also being genuinely fun to say and type. That's exactly the kind of phrase that ends up trending across hashtags, getting turned into fan edits, showing up in comment sections completely unprompted, and eventually becoming part of the more permanent vocabulary that fans use to describe similarly overwhelming moments in the future. Don't be surprised if this term gets recycled the next time Jimin does something equally show-stopping. Once a phrase like this earns its place in the cultural lexicon, it tends to stick around. I also want to take a moment to talk about why moments like this matter beyond just the surface level "he looked good" reaction, because I think there's a bigger picture worth acknowledging here. Representation in luxury fashion spaces has historically been fairly narrow, and the presence of an Asian male performer being positioned as the face of a major luxury house's menswear direction, and then having his individual styling choices treated as genuinely influential by Western fashion media, is a meaningful marker of change. It reflects a broader shift in whose aesthetic choices get taken seriously on a global stage, and it's part of a larger, ongoing conversation about diversity and representation within the fashion and entertainment industries. Jimin's continued presence in these spaces, and moments like this one where his individual styling gets analyzed with this level of seriousness and enthusiasm, contributes to normalizing that kind of representation for future generations of performers and public figures. That's not something I want to overstate or turn into something bigger than it is, but it's genuinely worth acknowledging as part of the full context here. Okay, let's bring this back to the fun stuff, because I know a lot of you are here for the chaos, the reactions, and the general excitement of it all, and honestly, that's the best part of covering a story like this. The comments sections under every single post about this moment have been an absolute roller coaster. You've got people making jokes about needing therapy after seeing the photos. You've got people comparing this look to iconic hairstyles throughout entertainment history. You've got hairstylists in the comments tagging their own clients, half joking, half serious, about wanting to recreate the look. And you've got the classic wave of "I wasn't ready for this" style comments that show up whenever Jimin does literally anything that catches people off guard. There's also been a noticeable wave of edits and video compilations stitching together footage from this appearance with previous tour looks, essentially building out a visual timeline of Jimin's hairstyling evolution over the past year or so. Watching that progression laid out side by side really highlights just how intentional and varied his styling choices have been. It's not just random experimentation, there's a visible sense of growth and refinement across each new look, which makes moments like this one feel less like a lucky one-off and more like the payoff of consistent creative development over time. So where does this leave us? Well, if the pattern holds, and based on everything we've seen so far, it probably will, this won't be the last time we're covering a moment like this. Jimin's relationship with Dior is ongoing, his influence in fashion spaces continues to grow, and if hair experts are already coining specific named aesthetics for individual looks he's debuting, it's safe to assume the bar is only going to keep rising from here. Whatever comes next, whether that's another red carpet appearance, another tour leg with a whole new visual identity, or another editorial feature spotlighting his influence, you can bet it's going to generate the same kind of reaction across fan communities and mainstream fashion coverage alike. Before we wrap up, I want to hear from you. Do you think soft punk is the perfect way to describe this look, or would you have named it something else entirely? Drop your thoughts down in the comments, I read every single one, and I love seeing how differently everyone interprets these moments. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next update, because knowing this fandom and knowing Jimin's track record, it probably won't be long before we're back here talking about the next big style moment. Thank you so much for watching, I'll see you in the next video, and as always, take care of yourselves. Bye!